Anterior tooth arrangements. Armamentarium includes articulated maxillary and mandibular occlusal rim, glass plate, measuring scale, pencil, wax knife, wax carver, selected tooth, modeling wax, chip blower, rubber bowl, cotton. Placement of central incisor. Measure the mesiodistal width and the cervico-incisal height of the maxillary central incisor tooth with the scale. The same measurement is then transferred to the maxillary occlusal rim. The required amount of softened wax is removed with the help of a carver and then the tooth is placed. The long axis of the central incisor is positioned parallel to the vertical axis when viewed from the front. The incisal edge of the maxillary central incisor is positioned in line with the anterior occlusal plane. The central pin of the articulator will point the mesio-incisal line edge of the central incisor. The outline of the incisal edge of the maxillary central incisor should follow the outline of the maxillary occlusal rim when viewed occlusally. Placement of lateral incisor. Measure the dimensions of the maxillary lateral incisor with the help of a measuring scale and transfer the measurements into the maxillary occlusal rim. The long axis of the lateral incisor is placed slightly inclined to the vertical axis. The incisal aspect of the tooth is inclined towards the vertical axis when viewed from the front. The incisal edge of the maxillary lateral incisor is placed slightly short of the occlusal plane. The incisal edge of the maxillary central incisor is placed in line with the occlusal plane. The incisal edge of the maxillary lateral incisor should follow the outline of the occlusal rim when viewed occlusally. Placement of maxillary canine. The outline of the maxillary canine is marked on the maxillary occlusal rim with a heated wax carver and the required amount of wax is scooped out. The long axis of the maxillary canine should be parallel to the vertical axis when viewed from the front. The cervical part of the maxillary canine is placed more prominent than compared to the incisal aspect when viewed from the front. The long axis of the maxillary canine should be parallel to the vertical axis when viewed from the side. The cuspid tip of the maxillary canine is placed in contact with the occlusal plane. The maxillary canine should follow the outline of occlusal rim and the tip of canine corresponds to the canine papillary line. The central incisor, lateral incisor and the canine are placed in the same manner in the opposite quadrant. This is the glass plate relation of completed maxillary anteriors. Placement of mandibular central incisor. The desired outline is marked on the mandibular occlusal rim. Scoop out the wax and then the mandibular central incisor is placed. The long axis of the tooth is parallel to the vertical axis. The incisal edge of the teeth is placed 0.5 mm above the occlusal plane when viewed from the front. The incisal edge of the mandibular central incisor should follow the outline of the occlusal rim, and the incisal edge of the mandibular central incisor should not cross over the land area when viewed occlusally. Placement of mandibular lateral incisor. The long axis of the mandibular lateral incisor is placed parallel to the vertical axis, and the incisal edge is 0.5 to 1 mm above the occlusal plane when viewed from the front. The incisal edge of the mandibular lateral incisor tooth is placed straight when viewed from the side. The incisal edge of the mandibular lateral incisor should follow the outline of the occlusal rim, and the incisal edge should not cross over the land area of the cusp when viewed occlusally. Placement of mandibular canine. The cuspid tip of the mandibular canine is placed 0.5 to 1 mm over the occlusal plane, and the long axis is inclined mesially when viewed from the front. The cuspid tip of the mandibular canine slopes slightly lingually when viewed from the side, and the mandibular canine should follow the outline of the occlusal rim, and the cuspid tip should not cross over the land area when viewed occlusally. The vertical overlap between the maxillary and mandibular incisor edge should be 0.5 to 1 mm, and the horizontal overlap between the maxillary and mandibular incisor edge should be 1 to 2 mm.